All right, you guys. So I wanted to make a quick video about this graph here. A lot of times when people on Twitter and on YouTube talk about the Federal Reserve doing quantitative easing or quantitative tightening, they usually reference this graph, and it's pretty simple. If the graph is trending up, that's quantitative easing, right? So the Federal Reserve is you can say they're acquiring assets or adding assets to their balance sheet. Um, and if it's going down, it's quantitative tightening. They're removing assets, right? Um, so let's see here. And so the really simple explanation is if the government wants to raise money, they sell bonds, for example, to the public or whoever. So you give them cash, they give you a bond, and in 10 years or whatever, they give you back the money and you get interest payments along the way. Um, and so basically, it's a loan of cash to the government, and they give you an IOU, which is the bond or whatever, right? Well, the Federal Reserve can also buy these bonds. The thing is, when you buy the bonds, you give them your hard-earned cash. When the Federal Reserve gives them cash and they buy a bond, they just print the money out of thin air, and that's why it's so upsetting to many people and such a controversial issue. Is because that this is how they're injecting money into the economy. Is they buy a bond, but they're buying it with money that they could just literally print out of thin air. Anyways, you can probably get a more obviously a way more detailed explanation from other folks out there. But just wanted to give the background for this graph here. So like I said, most of the time people show this graph, and you can see here in 20. So okay, lines going up like heavily right around here. That was COVID, right? March of 2020. Let's zoom in to get a picture of this, and you can see here January, February, March. It's when it really ramped it up, and then it's kind of gone up on an uptrend ever since then. If you zoom out, have there ever been examples of quantitative tightening, or at least trends, not just like this little blip here, but like a longer trend? Yeah, I mean like this section in here, if you zoom in, you can see there's a clear downtrend, and then goes back up there. Okay, so what I wanted to show here is that so this graph comes directly from the Federal Reserve, and this is the URL here. Um, what you can do is you can actually change the display of the data so that instead of showing just a graph of the total assets, you can actually show, I guess, what would be the equivalent of the derivative of the assets, or that is to say the rate of change, or the change every week. So the number is reported, or this number basically is the value, the assets as of Wednesday, but they publish the data every Thursday, I believe, 4:30 Eastern time. Uh, and just, I think you can check that here. Release H41. If you go to this page, they talk about it here. Yeah, these data are released each Thursday, generally at 4:30 p.m. Okay, so once a week, the balance sheet is basically updated, right? Okay, so on their website, what you can do is you can go to Edit Graph, and then under Units, you can actually change this to instead of millions of US dollars, you can change it to change millions of US dollars. So you do that, and now all of a sudden you see the difference from week to week. Now it's kind of messy if it's like this line. So what you can do is you can switch to the Format tab over here. Line style. Let's do, oh no, not that one, excuse me. Graph type. Instead of line, oops. Okay, you can't see that because the browser's doing something weird. Okay, sorry. I resized the window just so you could see this. Um, Line, bar. Okay, there we go. And so now it shows you the discrete data from week to week. And so here you can more clearly see that, for example, let's zoom into the most recent bunch of weeks. It's not consistently increasing or decreasing. It's like they add to the balance sheet, maybe add a little bit more, and then one week they'll subtract, and then they'll add, and then they'll subtract. So so when people say, are they tightening it? It's like, well, look, legit quantitative tightening would be like, let's zoom out, something like it would look like back here, maybe this section here. I mean, this is closer to quantitative tightening because they're actually removing assets from uh, they're removing assets weekly, more or less consistency, and the small exceptions are in there, but they're relatively insignificant. You compare that to like now, and clearly we're still adding with a few exceptions. So until this pretty much looks like they're subtracting on a weekly basis. I mean, they're basically not doing quantitative tightening yet. Now, what people are looking at is like, okay, when they are adding, like on this week and on this week, and maybe actually even last week, they added, but it was like only 450 million, so less than $1 billion. And so they're adding less than they used to, right? But they're still adding. So it's almost like you want to take the second derivative of the graph and see, okay, relative to this, how much is the graph changing? But anyways, I think this one is useful enough. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video to show that you can actually change the way the data is represented here and get a clearer picture. And like I said, you can check back on this every Thursday, and you'll see the updated data. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention is if you modify the graph like this and then you want to keep it, I mean, the URL doesn't change. Like you can't just copy the URL and then save a link to this graph. But what you can do is go to this share links. There's a few options here. You do page short URL. And when you do that, it gives you an actual URL that you can copy. And it looks like, so you can take that, and if you go to new page, it actually takes you back to that customized graph, right? So in this case, obviously I changed it to bar chart and updated it so that it's only the changes on a weekly basis. So that's pretty cool. You can, if you modify it in a certain kind of way, you can, save a link to that. Now, I have created an account on here. Anybody can create a free account, and you can like, favorite certain graphs or whatever. And so I'm not sure if that saving the URL feature requires this account or not. So anyway, give it a try. Um, but yeah, if it doesn't work without an account, like I said, maybe just create an account and give it a shot. So just for fun here, I've zoomed out to take a look at the entire data set going back to 2002. And I mean, you can see that obviously, as far as like quantitative easing goes, the COVID incident was just totally off the charts. And I mean, in comparison to anything else in history, as far as like absolute values go. And then after that, the overall, just the kind of the week to week adding this section in here, you can see it really is larger than this section here, and even this one back here. So when people say, this is unprecedented, I mean, yeah, it is. And you just take a look at the data, and very easily you can tell by looking at it visually. Um, this is, very much unheard of. So, and that's why people are really bracing themselves for when, uh, when it starts to look less like this and maybe more like in this section where, they're removing assets. What is that going to do? How are people going to react? A lot of people say, oh, that's, we're in the process of pricing all of that in, and who, but who knows whether or not they're actually going to move in that direction or not. So let's see. So yeah, I'll leave this video with just that right there. I could talk a little bit more about some cool things you can do in the edit graph feature, but maybe I'll keep this video simple and leave that for maybe for a different one. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye.